The 1990s, if you recall, was a very interesting decade. If you've lived through it, you know all about it. So I remember during that time a resurgence of several things that seemed to reach their peak in the 1950s and 60s. Things like the spy genre, for instance. The spy film was popularized, like the idea of a spy situation wasn't new, but it came to a head in the 1960s. So you had stuff like James Bond, obviously, Mission Impossible, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Get Smart, Secret Agent Man. You know, there's a long list of shows that then found a resurgence in the 1990s and early 2000s with many of those things became film properties. In some cases, they became films much later, well into the 2010s or so. But the point I'm getting at is that the 1960s and the 1990s have something in common, in that the 1990s, in some ways, in terms of film and television, echoed a lot of what was going on in the 1960s, 50s, and 60s. And that's a suitable enough segue into another genre of media, the UFO/alien science fiction genre. A lot of what we think of when we think of aliens comes from a lot of the stuff that came out of the 1950s and 60s. So the 1990s, 30 years later-ish or so, gave us things like the X-Files, where we got twists on that idea and the tropes about that. We had shows like Roswell. We got movies like Men in Black, Independence Day, movies like The Arrival, which came out around the same time as this movie that I'm going to talk about. And, of course, this movie, Contact. Let's unpack it. The Arrival is an interesting movie because that came out within a year or two of this movie, starring Charlie Sheen. That's also a good movie about aliens and stuff, too. And it's interesting because in that movie, you have something called the SETI, which is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It's a program or a system, an organization that is prevalent, or at least it's mentioned in that movie. The coincidence is that SETI is also mentioned in this movie. It is the group, the entity that our main character, Jodie Foster's Ellie, is working for. In fact, she turns down a role as a professor at a top school to do this work as a researcher. So, something to be said for not only just the alien craze that swept the 1990s, but I thought it was kind of cool to have two movies in the same decade, around the same time, have a program with that program mentioned. So this movie is directed by Robert Zemeckis, who, if you know, you know. He directed films like Back to the Future and Forrest Gump, Beowulf. The man has a pretty good track record with films that have really good visual and practical effects and typically stellar acting. And this movie is not an exception. This is based on a novel by Carl Sagan and his wife. The result is pretty good, I think. It's a shame that if you look now, you might find that the movie is fairly mixed. A lot of normal people, as in people who are not critics, not professional critics or whatever it is, like the movie a lot. The range of opinions will vary on this movie. I, for one, I liked it. What you have here is a movie about a scientist named Ellie, played by Jodie Foster, as mentioned earlier, who finds evidence of extraterrestrial life. Through a wild series of events, she has to unscramble this message that is presumably received from other intelligence that's not from Earth. She meets all kinds of opposition from government officials to fellow scientists and the like, the outside world, people who don't agree with what she's doing. And you want her to succeed. And by the time you get to the end, I think you'll be surprised by what she actually gains in the process. She wants one thing, but she ends up getting something else. And I think we also get something else too in the process. We want what she wants. We want what she wants because we want her to win. But I think the movie gives us the best possible resolution given the context of the story. It worked for me. And it also doesn't give you any concrete answers to various questions that might come up. And I liked that. I like that it leaves things open a little bit so that the audience can have a dialogue. And I'm a fan of that too, that nothing is really definitive. And it's a lot like real life sometimes when you find things or you experience things that are unexplainable. You never really get an answer to certain things. And I like that the film reflects that you just have to believe. Sometimes you have to just believe. Even if you don't believe it, you have to believe it. Or you have to accept it. That's really the game. You don't have to believe it, but you have to accept the results. You can believe what you see in front of you. And also just if you don't have answers to stuff, sometimes you won't ever get answers to certain things. Then you have to just accept that and move forward as best you can with that knowledge. I think the movie does a good job of depicting that and leaving things open for the audience to then figure out or not figure out and continue to mull over. The backbone of this movie is a conversation really between science and faith. And where do the two places meet? What does one believe? Does it matter what you believe? That's what the movie is sort of founded on. And structurally, I think it's strong in that way, because that argument is not a new argument. It's an argument that persists today. This is one of several long-standing big topic conversations. And I liked how the movie handles that. The two ideas of faith and science are personified by Jodie Foster's character, Ellie, and Matthew McConaughey's character. And who, by the way, is a G. Like Matthew McConaughey, I'll get to him. But I have to get that out of the way first before I go back to talking about what I thought about McConaughey individually. But I think it's a nice dance how these two people embody the ideas, and how their characters, the decisions they make, the things they say, funnel right back into what they believe. Jodie Foster is a scientist, so everything is funneled through that lens. When she's faced with questions about faith and whether or not she believes in God or a higher power or whatever else, the only way she can make sense of that is from a lens of science, because that's how she processes things. That's where she comes from. Conversely, Matthew McConaughey, but what's interesting about him is that he is a scientist, or he understands the science of stuff, but he is a faith-based person. He comes from the perspective of believing in a higher power, believing in God. And so it's an interesting dynamic at play when you come across this notion of other intelligence outside of human life. And if you're someone who is like religiously religious, like believing in whatever the faith is, whatever the sacred texts say, the sacred text doesn't tell us anything about aliens and life not on Earth. And if you believe the sacred texts, it feels like you might not believe in aliens, or if you take the text literally. Not that Matthew McConaughey's character does that. It's just an interest. If you can push this to its extreme on either end between science and faith, and get some interesting results. I don't think either of them are extreme. They believe what they believe. They come together. There's room, I think, for negotiation and open conversation about the other person's perspective. And I think that's actually a really cool conversation. The fact that these two people who obviously have an attraction for each other, can come together and ultimately gel, while recognizing and understanding that there is a key issue between them that will be an ongoing discussion between science and faith, and the significance of that in their lives. The acting, you already know what I'm going to say about Jodie Foster. So I'll save her for later, but I'm going to start with McConaughey, because McConaughey, he's such a ball of charm. He's just exudes charm. You can tell he is just like, you have to be super confident, super sure of yourself to act across Jodie Foster, who at that point already was a veteran. She's homegirl, child actor, already award winning, already like serious business. And you're, fresh-faced, handsome Matthew McConaughey coming in trying to do a scene with her. Like it was crazy for me to witness. Like, I'm like, man, I don't know. How could you not be, and maybe he was intimidated. I don't know. You would never know it. If you know anything about Matthew McConaughey's dad had the saying about not half-assing something, he definitely didn't half-ass it, because you're in the scene with Jodie Foster, you're doing pretty good. So I wonder what his dad would have said were he to have lived to see that. But yeah, McConaughey is great. He's not around a lot, but he's good enough. He's in there, and he makes an impression. The movie also has a solid support cast. You have guys like John Hurt and Tom Skerritt, who obviously members of the USS Nostromo. Fans know what time it is. If they know the Nostromo, you know what it is already. That's cool that you have them in this movie about contact with extraterrestrials. I wonder if it was some kind of joke to cast them, like an in-joke, to cast those two guys specifically for the roles that or just whatever role they had. To cast Tom Skerritt and John Hurt has to be some kind of nod. Like, it feels like it has to be. This movie is about extraterrestrial contact, and they were members of the Nostromo. Anyway, something to think about. Then you got people like Angela Bassett, who again is in the White House. I had just seen her in the Netflix 0 Hour or Hour Zero, the Robert De Niro led Netflix miniseries, where she plays the president in that show. In this movie, she is a government official in the White House, and she commands the screen. She's in the movie for not a long time, but again, her presence is felt, and you believe her. Hey, she could be a high-ranking person in the White House, and she plays the heck out of that role. James Woods, he plays exactly the guy you expect him to play. If you look at a lot of James Woods roles from the 90s, he is often someone who is antagonistic or is in opposition in some way to some other force, whatever it is. And he's usually some guy that the hero, whoever the main character, is not getting along with. This is when I think of him, I think of movies, most of the movies he's been in, that I remember him like that, or he was the main character and he was not a likable person, or he was the main character and he had some jerkish qualities about him. He's similar in this movie. He just happens to be the head of the NSA. So, and the cast is rounded out by actors like William Fichtner and a baby-faced Jenna Malone. She's so cute in this movie. Oh, man. And then, of course, Jodie Foster. I don't know what there is to say about her that is going to make any difference. If you care, Jodie Foster is typically awesome. Even if the movie she's in is not, and no matter how it's written, she will find a way to make it work and make you care a little bit. I don't think this movie has that problem. This movie happens to be good, and she's good in it. And she's a suitable lead. She carries the heck out of this movie. One thing about her character that bugged me a little bit, I think it works overall, but I feel like I kept wanting her to take more. You see examples of her being very driven and determined, and obviously she's quite intelligent, and she shows that in lots of ways, not in the ways that in a way that shows like bravado. She's not like putting it out there, yeah, I'm smart. It's just like the work that she's doing in trying to decode this message and working with her team is displaying her intelligence, and it doesn't always feel like she's appreciated, and that bothered me. I know that that's part of the story. The story, she's supposed to not be appreciated until she's appreciated, or she's supposed to be secretly appreciated. It's like this weird but I kept wanting her to be more forthright with and more. I mean, she had moments. She definitely had moments of that. And Foster again plays that very well. She plays it in such a way that you feel for her, and that you feel a lot for. And I think also too, when you know where she comes from, you understand her backstory. That gives some extra weight to, I guess, why she's moving like that. It's not explicit. None of this is explained, but it's there if you want to see it. And what we get and how Foster portrays it's pretty compelling. So aside from the acting, the next big selling point I think for this movie, really, I think the real selling point in a movie, in most movies about extraterrestrial contact or any kind of alien stuff at all, is the special effects. And I have to say that they look a little bit dated now, but they're still strong. You get clearly what they're going for. The way there's an apparatus that's designed to kind of figure out how to travel light years away, whatever it is. And the way the apparatus looks, it's compelling. It looks good. It looks practically, the set of it actually looks really strong. I like the costume design of that, like the space suit, like the particular unique space. It's like this unique suit, and it feels real. It feels like it could be a real something that exists. And then when you get to the visual effects of that and how it works and everything else, I think it's well rendered. So dated or not, you know what it's going for. And the last little thing that I think is really cool, it's just details, is that I love the fact that this movie uses real CNN anchors, real news people. Yeah, Larry King, for real, which is not new. You've seen Larry King in other movies, like Ghostbusters and other things. He pops up in other things. But I like that there's that little thing that makes it feel more real. And I think having stuff like that makes this movie feel like, just like it could be real. And you believe that when you have people from the White House responding, the president, there's like clips of Bill Clinton and stuff involved and stuff. And it's actually pretty cool to see. It made me think that if we actually made contact with extraterrestrials in real life, how officials handle it in this movie and how the regular public, the general public, handles it would be kind of like this movie handles it. This is what it feels like. It makes a lot of sense. How would you act if you were somewhere, maybe in the Midwest, maybe in the southern states, whatever it is, somewhere that's even in the cities? There are people everywhere who might respond in a way that you might be kind of hysterical if it was imminent that we made contact. And you don't know, at some point, either we go and visit somebody or somebody comes to Earth, whatever it is, we don't know. It reminds me of, I remember when the year 2000 was coming, so 1999 was a scary year for a lot of people, I think, because Y2K was on the horizon. There's a real fear about the world ending, power going out, people having to, fend for themselves, find resources and stuff like that. And I think a similar way, when you think about the zombie apocalypse and those ideas, is kind of how people might react if aliens were coming to Earth or we were communicating with them or whatever it is. And I like how the movie depicts that. It feels like, oh, that's how they probably would respond. The White House might respond this way, and other countries, other government officials from other countries in conversations with America would respond similarly. It'll be a whole thing. I like how, even though this is fictional, I like how it kind of feels, it gets at some truth. It reminds me of an idea about science. When you think about the idea of science and faith, and how the argument of hardcore scientists is about trying to get to the truth, regardless of what that is. And the idea from a faith perspective is that what you feel is true. You don't have to actually have something tactile to touch and see to believe that it's real. If you believe in it and something happened that you couldn't explain, to whatever it is, the result, believe in the result. That's true. And I think film acts like that a little bit. Film is fake, right? Movies are not real, but they are real. There are real humans that we see on screen emoting. They're really emoting. Yes, it's written, it's in a script, and they have to get to a place where they have the remote. But sometimes people are crying real tears. That's a real saline liquid coming out of somebody's eyes. They're trying to tap into some truth that we can respond to. Why do you watch movies in the first place? To escape from something, to find ways to empathize with other characters. What is the purpose of any entertainment? You're getting something out of it that actually has tangible, real something that affects you in a real way. What's on screen might be fake, but it's tapping into something that is true. And Contact kind of feels like that for me. So that's going to do it for this review. If you haven't seen Contact, or you haven't seen it in a while, I implore you, please do check it out. And while we're there, look up movies on YouTube. I'm just really getting into this. Like in the last maybe year and a half or two, I've been finding really good movies on YouTube for free. They have a rotation, so they don't stay there forever. But if you catch some ones, I guarantee you'll find at least 5 to 10 movies that you will want to watch. If you just look at the movies tab and scroll, the further you scroll, like if you get closer to the bottom, you start feeling like you're getting the bottom of the barrel, where things are maybe not as good, or they don't feel like they're as good. They don't feel like there's something you might want to watch. But a good 75% of those movies, maybe 80% of those movies, are all good or weird, or there's something there that you might want to watch. The YouTube free movies is, I don't know what they're getting, how they're getting those movies. I just watched recently Get Out on YouTube for free, which was wild. I thought that was ridiculous, which I haven't talked about on this channel, but in fact, I don't even think I've ever reviewed it on any of my places that I review movies. That has to change. We got to talk about that movie. But yeah, it was wild, like how they rotate out of movies. Anyway, do yourself a favor, and I'm late to the game. Some people probably knew about this before I did. I'm just coming to this like now in the last year and a half or so. It's still fairly new to me. I'm always surprised by the movies I found on YouTube for free. And Contact was one of those movies I found for free. I'd never seen it all the way through, and I just put it on. I said, let me watch this movie. And I'm glad it was there. Glad I watched it because I thought it was good. So check it out when you get a chance. As always, thank you for taking the time to watch this video and getting out of here for now. But take it easy, and I'll see you the next time.